Thank you, Sophia. Welcome, everybody. This afternoon's first panel could not be more relevant to the concerns of Hizmet or important to the concerns of Americans and non-Americans today, and that is the whole issue of interfaith, intercommunication, interfaith dialogue, true dialogue as opposed to fake dialogue, dialogue which is about talking with each other and learning about each other, as opposed to fake dialogue, which is when my intention actually is to convert you rather than to learn about you, or yours is to convert me rather than to learn about me. We are privileged to have three wonderful speakers on today's panel. The first is Yakov, Rabbi Dr. Yakov Nagen, who is an Israeli rabbi and author. He is a leader in interfaith peace initiatives, specifically between Judaism and Islam, and also encounters between Judaism and Eastern religions. Dr. Nagen is the director of the Blickl Institute for Interfaith Dialogue and the Beit Midrash, which is the house of study for Judaism and humanity. He also teaches at Yeshivat Otni and has written extensively on Jewish philosophy and Talmud, and a recent volume, a small volume that has to do with interfaith dialogue, in fact. So we'll hear from him first.
Good afternoon. Masal al-khir, tzarayim tovim. Religion is part of the problem. Therefore, it must be part of the solution. This was the guiding insight of the late Rabbi Menachem Fruman about the deadly conflicts in the Middle East. For the peoples in the Middle East, religion is a deep part of our identity, of who we are. These identities could set us against one another, leading to hatred, violence. But these identities could also bring us together. If we see the other's deep identity as a false religion, rejected by the divine, this will set us against each other. But if we believe in our head and in our heart that the same God that we each pray to, love, serve, is the same God that we share, we can also believe that there is a great story that we share, and we each have a place in that story. Let me share with you how do you go back with this?
The other button.
Right. This is together with Rabbi Menachem Fruman. There was a drought year in the Holy Land, and Israeli Jews, Palestinian Muslims came together to pray for our common need. We, the land, we need rain. So again, as on a personal note, in the many conflicts of the Middle East, as an Israeli Jew, I live in three concentric circles of tension and conflict, whether within Israeli society, that the largest minority are Muslims, whether it is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or whether the place of Israel in the Middle East. In all of these circles, the primary issue, the sides are respectively Jewish and Muslim. So healing these relations can impact and help bring relief to the suffering people of the Middle East. A sign of hope in the recent accords between Israel and some of the Arab nations have taken its name not from locations foreign to the Middle East, but the Abrahamic Accords take its name from our common heritage. I should mention, recently I was in Rabat, Morocco, and I suggested that we call it the Sarah and Hagar Accords. So maybe we'll wait for the next country. Actually, I should mention that that particular conference in Rabat was held on the same day as the game between Morocco and Spain. Apropos to the previous discussion, we prayed all day and we danced all night. I apologize to anyone here from Spain. On the surface, it should be self-evident that the shared heritage of Jews and Muslims should bring us together. The Quran in 31 places talks about Ahlul Kitab, the people of the book. The Jewish rabbinical literature has great respect for the belief of unity of God in Islam. But the realities are much less rosy. Medieval polemics had led to theologies of, on one side, Islam seeing previous Abrahamic religions as being abrogated, the Naskh, or the Takhrif, which sees that the holy books of previous Abrahamic traditions as forgeries of the original. Where the Jewish part, being a minority, the policy to survive was building walls instead of building bridges. So there is a lot that we need to change in order to realize that it would be a great blessing to see our relationship not as competing stories, but complementary components of a shared story. And we must share a dream that just like in the 20th century, there have been such great strides in Jewish-Christian relations, or as in the words of the Catholic Church, Nostra Aetate, we need a Jewish-Muslim Nostra Aetate. And in fact, the founder of my institution, which bears his name, Karl Hermann Blickli, thank you. As a German Christian, his vision was a trialogue, not a dialogue, but a trialogue that we would engage our Muslim brothers and sisters to complete a vision, to build the potential to build a shared future. Now, in this journey, one of our roles is to find who are the partners for this future Jewish-Muslim Nostra Aetate. And again, through the guidance of Karl Hermann Blickli, we've partnered in many ways with the Hizmet movement, and we've had the pleasure and honor of hosting many Hizmet groups in Jerusalem. This picture is actually, it's very, very moving to look at this picture, because I will try to give the context of this group of Hizmet brothers who have come to Israel. Right before the meeting, my daughter in 8th grade called me in tears from her school bus, because right a little bit before the school bus, a bomb went off at the bus stop, leaving dead and wounded. And this is a picture that we began our meeting praying together for the victims of that terror attack. And just last week, in that same room, we hosted another group with many Hizmet brothers and sisters, also with Christians also from Germany. And that was the day of the earthquake. And again, we were in tears, and we prayed for all of our brothers and sisters in Turkey and in Syria. Another delegation that left a deep impression on all of us and was also widely reported throughout the Israeli press was the delegation of Hizmet sisters who came to Israel. And the Blickli Institute is part of a larger network of Or Torah Stone, which is Orthodox Jewish, but very open. And we took the Hizmet sisters to visit our women institutions. And here they are visiting. This is, you could see, I look at this picture and I really feel how we are so similar. You look at the hijab of the Hizmet sisters. You look at one of my associates in the Blickli Institute, Harabanit Dvor Evron, with her hair covering, but together, very traditional in their dress and very open in their engagement with the modern world. These are a Torah scroll in the heart of the study hall of that a women institution in Jerusalem. And if we continue, and here a lot of our work is also between Israelis and Palestinians. And here, this is another group we deal with. This is a Palestinian Center for Reconciliation. And here too, they join us for this ongoing dialogue, again, to help give hope and a future for all of us. And then in the followed, next picture I think is, and here is a visit to Yad Vashem, commemorating the Holocaust. And again, so much of learning to live together is to acknowledge the pain and fear of one another. Now, in another way, and I will get this woman delegation helped the general thesis and of what I will present in the paper, which will be longer than the 15 minutes that I have here, about in the early 90s, there were a number of statements by Fethullah Gulen that were very hostile to Jews. And one thing, these statements are often rehashed again and again in many articles that have a big dose of cynicism to say and to hold and say that you're very naive if you think things are changed. Now, in Jewish law, to prove something, you need two witnesses. The same way that many decades ago there were negative comments about Jews, there are also some problematic statements about the status of women, also said by that same leader. But just like with my eyes, I could see how deep and profound the changes are in the Hizmet movement, that with the hijab, there is deepness and dignity. I could see too, this strengthens what I believe, the additional evidence that yes, in the same way, statements said about Jews, they pain me to read them, but to realize these were said decades ago, and this is not the reality today. If we hold people to everything they've ever said, we will never be able to heal a broken world. So I would like to present three areas to see how the Hizmet movement and Gulen have, the realities now are so different than things that were said decades ago. And I am very grateful. Part of the preparation for the conference, I read the book by Dr. Paul, who spoke in the previous session. So I'm very grateful for many of his invaluable footnotes to help the research on this subject. So I think there are three areas to see why is it that I feel the Hizmet are important partners for this process. The first is Gulen is very explicit. He does not deny his earlier statements. He doesn't hide them. He acknowledges them. He takes responsibility for them and says, yes, but I have changed what I have thought about these subjects. To quote a famous interview in The Atlantic in 2013, in his own words, during the interfaith process in the 90s, I had a chance to know practitioners, non-Islamic practitioners, and must revise my expressions from earlier periods. I sincerely admit that I have misunderstood some verses and prophetic statements. So first, there's an acknowledgement and not denial of the past. Secondly, the changes are not only external, but are reflective of a deep and holistic theology. For example, many statements and lectures about seeing from sort rooted in the Quran itself, the value and blessing of variety, of the differences that God brought into the world and then how we must embrace it. Whether quoting the Surah and the Quran in many contexts about we were created as different tribes to know one another. Another quote from the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is many consider to be chronologically the last surah of the Quran, very explicitly says that if God wanted, he could have given one book to all. But God chose to give the Torah to the Jewish people, the Gospels to the Christians, and then the book to the people, and all should do based on what they receive. These statements deeply root within. This is not a reformation of Islam. It is rooting itself back into so many of the original sources. And again, in many of his speeches, he quotes the positive things Islamic traditions have to say about Jews and Christians. Often he repeats the story about the prophet standing up respecting a funeral procession, and when being pointed out by others that, well, that isn't a Muslim, it's a Jew, saying that yes, but he's a person. So it is, number one, I said, he acknowledges and doesn't deny the past statements and is explicit that he has changed his views. Number two, it is part of a deep-rooted, holistic theology. And number three, we know that many of the conflicts in the Middle East are very complex. That would be somewhat of an understatement. And often, preventing conflicts as a mythical struggle between light and darkness, good and evil, instead of helping resolve those conflicts, just make them deeper embedded. But again, in the spirit of Rumi, one of the great sources of inspiration for Gulen, beyond ideas of right thinking, beyond ideas of wrong thinking, there is a place. There we will meet. And both in his statements, and also I've seen in later statements in the institution of the Alliance for Shared Values, in dealing with the conflicts in the Middle East, there's a feeling of deep empathy for the pain and suffering of all sides, and not a blame game of breaking it up, the right side, the wrong side, but true empathy for the shared humanity and prayer to overcome these conflicts. So when I put these three things together, I feel to join very good company, whether it is Kenny Jacobson, was the head of the Anti-Defamation League, who certainly could smell out any anti-Semitism, the former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Elio Bakshi Daron, was in the first picture, chief rabbis from Turkey, yes, to leave the cynics aside and join them to believe that this is a true partner to build the future that we all need, that we all deserve. And getting close to the end, in Jewish law, Maimonides even gives the conditions to identify when someone has really changed. He says there are two conditions. One is you must acknowledge the past, not deny what was done in the past. And number two, demonstrate the change. Both these conditions have been overwhelmingly fulfilled, in my opinion, and there's a Talmudic dictum that it is considered to be more higher than someone who, from beginning to end, was impeccable, to be somebody who changed his way, or in the Hebrew, Makom Shabbalet Shuva Omdim, Sadikim Gemurim Ein Omdim. So I'd like to end with this is an image of, Google every year has, at the end of the year, they have a 1-minute clip called The Year in Search. And there are a number of pictures, each with a category. This picture, taken at an event called the Jerusalem Hug, an event with Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Muslims come together to create a human chain, to hug the walls of the old city of Jerusalem, saying and praying, let this unite us and not divide us. And the category for this picture was searching to make sense. And our hope and prayer is together with the Hizmet movement and other movements within Islam and Judaism that this picture can become a broad reality. Thank you.